I still remember the sound of my 6-year-old son's screams echoing through that pristine mansion, the kind of screams that carve themselves into your soul and never leave. Blood was pooling around his tiny feet, trapped in those designer shoes my stepsister Chloe had rigged with mousetraps, while she stood there filming it all, her laughter mixing with his cries like some twisted symphony. That was the morning I walked out of my mother's house forever, carrying my sobbing child, not knowing that the nightmare was just beginning. What I didn't know then was that Chloe would upload that video, that millions would watch my son's pain for entertainment, that my own mother would comment beneath it with laughing emojis. I didn't know I was about to lose everything before I could finally win. If this story resonates with you, if you've ever felt powerless against family toxicity or online cruelty, please hit that like button and subscribe. Your support means everything, and I promise this story has a twist you won't see coming. Drop a comment telling me if you've ever had to cut off family for your child's safety. Now let me take you back to where it all started. 2 years before that terrible morning, I thought I had finally found stability. After my divorce from Jax's father, I had moved back into my mother Eleanor's estate with my son. It seemed like the right choice at the time. The house was massive, a sprawling property in the suburbs with more rooms than we could ever use. Eleanor had always been distant, cold even, but I convinced myself that having her grandson around might soften her. I was so desperate for family, for belonging, that I ignored every red flag waving frantically in my face. My stepsister Chloe had moved in a few months before us. She was 24, 10 years younger than me, and had cultivated a massive following on social media as a lifestyle influencer. Her feed was all green smoothies, meditation poses, and pastel motivational quotes about mental health and self-care. She called herself an advocate for wellness and authenticity. Her followers worshipped her. They had no idea who she really was behind the camera. From the first day, Chloe made it clear that she resented our presence. She would make snide comments about Jax being too loud, too messy, too needy. When I tried to set up his toys in the playroom, she complained that it ruined her aesthetic for her photos. Eleanor never defended us. Instead, she would sigh and suggest that maybe I could keep Jax's things confined to our bedroom. Just to keep the peace, she would say. I should have left then, but I had nowhere else to go. My ex-husband had disappeared, leaving us with nothing but debt. I was working double shifts at a coffee shop downtown, barely scraping by. Eleanor's house, despite its emotional cost, was the only roof I could afford over my son's head. The comments started small. Chloe would call Jax clingy when he asked me for a hug. She would roll her eyes when he cried, muttering about how I was raising him to be weak. Eleanor would nod along, adding her own observations about how I coddled him too much, how he needed to toughen up. I tried to shield Jax from their words, but he was smart. He started asking me if something was wrong with him. I would hold him tight and tell him he was perfect, but I could see the doubt creeping into his eyes. Then the pranks began. Chloe called them jokes. She would hide Jax's favorite stuffed elephant, the one his father had given him before he left. She would watch Jax search for it, tears streaming down his face, and film his distress for her close friend's story on social media. When I confronted her, she would laugh and say I was being dramatic. Eleanor would tell me to lighten up, that siblings teased each other all the time. But Chloe wasn't Jax's sibling. She was a grown woman targeting a child. One incident stands out from those dark months. Jax had been invited to a birthday party, his first since we moved to the new neighborhood. He was so excited. He picked out a present with his own saved allowance and talked about it for days. The morning of the party, his nice clothes were missing. I found them later, stuffed in the garbage outside, covered in what looked like paint but smelled like bleach. The fabric was destroyed. Chloe claimed she had no idea how it happened. Eleanor suggested Jax must have done it himself, acting out for attention. I knew the truth. I saw the smirk on Chloe's face when Jax had to wear his old, worn-out clothes to the party. I saw her phone pointed at him as we left, capturing his embarrassment. I started working more hours to save money for our own place. I would come home exhausted, my feet aching, my eyes burning from lack of sleep. Chloe would be lounging in the living room, phone in hand, crafting her perfect online persona. She would complain about how hard her day had been, editing content and responding to comments. Meanwhile, Eleanor would be sipping wine, scrolling through Chloe's posts and praising her for being so inspirational. I was invisible to them except when they needed something. Eleanor would ask me to clean up after their dinner parties. Chloe would demand I keep Jax quiet during her live streams. I complied, always hoping that if I just kept the peace a little longer, I could save enough to leave. But Jax was suffering. He became withdrawn, anxious. He started having nightmares. His teacher called me, concerned about his sudden change in behavior. He had been such a bright, happy child before we moved in with Eleanor and Chloe. Now he flinched at loud noises. He apologized constantly, even when he had done nothing wrong. I knew I was failing him by staying, but I felt trapped. The city was expensive. Every apartment I looked at required deposits I couldn't afford. I needed just a few more months. I didn't have a few more months. That morning started like any other. I was rushing to get Jax ready for school before my shift at the coffee shop. Eleanor was already up, sitting at the kitchen island with her black coffee, scrolling through her phone with that blank expression she always wore. She barely acknowledged us as we came downstairs. Chloe emerged from her room, already perfectly made up despite the early hour, phone in hand as always. She positioned herself on the sofa, angling for the best lighting. I should have known something was wrong by the way she kept glancing toward the front door, that cruel little smile playing at her lips. Jax was struggling with his shoes. He was 6 years old and still learning to tie his laces properly. I was in the kitchen packing his lunch when I heard him call out, "Mommy, my shoes feel weird. Something feels wrong." I turned to see him sitting on the floor by the door, his small hands pulling at his sneakers. Chloe's smile widened. She shifted her phone, making sure she had the perfect angle. "Try putting them on, honey," I said, distracted, assuming maybe a toy had fallen inside. "He's probably just being dramatic," Chloe sang out. "Like always." Jax pushed his foot into his shoe. The snap was audible even from across the room. Then came the scream. It was a sound no mother should ever have to hear, pure agony ripping from her child's throat. I dropped the lunchbox and ran. Jax was writhing on the floor, his face contorted in pain, trying desperately to pull his foot out of the shoe. I could see the edges of the metal trap through the canvas, could see the dark stains spreading. "Oh my God," I gasped, falling to my knees beside him. I grabbed the shoe and carefully pulled it off. 2 mousetraps were clamped onto his small toes, the metal bars crushing the delicate bones. Blood was flowing freely. Jax was sobbing, his whole body shaking. I fumbled with the traps, my hands shaking so badly I could barely get them open. Each one I removed revealed angry red marks and broken skin. Through my panic, I heard laughter. Chloe was laughing. She was still filming, her phone steady in her hand, capturing every moment of my son's agony and my horror. "Oh my God, this is gold," she said between giggles. "This is absolutely going viral. Look at his face." Something inside me snapped. I turned to her, my son's blood on my hands, and I felt a rage so pure it was almost clarifying. "What did you do?" My voice came out low, dangerous. Chloe just shrugged, still smiling. "It's just a prank, Sarah. Relax. It's not like he's actually hurt. Kids are dramatic." "Not actually hurt?" I screamed. "There are mousetraps embedded in his feet. You put mousetraps in a child's shoes." She rolled her eyes. "God, you're so sensitive. It's called a joke. Learn to take one." She turned her phone to face me, still recording. "And you're making this so much worse by overreacting. You're teaching him to be weak, just like you." I looked past Chloe to Eleanor, desperately hoping for some shred of maternal instinct, some sign of humanity. "Mom," I pleaded, "look at what she did to Jax." Eleanor glanced up from her coffee, looked at my bleeding son for exactly 2 seconds, and returned to her phone. "He's fine, Sarah. It's just a scratch. He's being overdramatic, just like you always were. In fact, Chloe, send me that video. I want to post it to my book club group. Time seemed to slow down. My mother had just asked my stepsister to send her a video of her grandson being tortured so she could share it for entertainment. Jax was still crying, clutching his injured foot. Chloe was checking her phone, already editing the footage. Eleanor was typing away, completely unmoved, and I realized, in that moment of perfect clarity, that I had been wrong about everything. I had thought I needed them. I had thought family meant something. I had thought if I just endured a little longer, things would get better. I gathered Jax into my arms. He buried his face in my shoulder, his tears soaking through my shirt. I stood up, my legs steadier than they had been in months. I looked at Eleanor first. You just lost your daughter and your grandson. Then I turned to Chloe. And you just made the biggest mistake of your life. Chloe laughed again, that light, dismissive sound that probably worked so well in her videos. Oh, please. Where are you going to go, Sarah? You're broke. You need us. You'll be back in a week, begging for your room back. You always come crawling back. Eleanor nodded, setting down her coffee. Don't be stupid, Sarah. You can't afford to live anywhere else. Just apologize to Chloe for overreacting and let's move past this. I didn't say another word. I carried Jax upstairs, grabbed the emergency bag I had secretly packed weeks ago, and walked out of that house. Jax's backpack bounced against my hip. His blood dripped onto the marble entryway. Behind me, I could hear Chloe already narrating her video for her followers. Guys, you won't believe the drama that just happened. Some people just can't take a joke. I didn't look back. Well, that's not entirely true. At the door, I paused and glanced over my shoulder one last time. Eleanor was already back on her phone. Chloe was adjusting her ring light. Neither of them thought I would actually leave. Neither of them believed I had it in me. Today, you both lost everything, I whispered. They didn't hear me, but they would. The apartment I found was above a laundromat on the east side of town. It was one bedroom, barely 400 square feet, and the windows didn't quite close all the way. The constant smell of detergent and fabric softener seeped through the floorboards. We could hear the washers and dryers running until late at night, a rhythmic thumping that became the soundtrack to our new life. Jax and I shared the bedroom. I hung a curtain down the middle to give him some sense of privacy. My bed was a second-hand futon that hurt my back. His was a twin mattress on the floor. There was no living room, just a tiny kitchen that opened into the bedroom space. The bathroom had rust stains in the sink and mold in the corners no matter how much I scrubbed. But it was ours. Nobody would hurt Jax here. The first few weeks were the hardest I had ever experienced. Jax's feet took time to heal. 2 of his toes were fractured. I had taken him to the emergency room that first day, and the medical bills were staggering. I picked up extra shifts at the coffee shop, then added a weekend job cleaning houses. I would leave Jax with a neighbor, Mrs. Chen, a grandmother who lived down the hall and seemed to understand without me having to explain. She would feed him dinner and help him with his homework. I would come home at 9 or 10 at night, exhausted, to find him already asleep, and I would just sit on the floor next to his mattress and watch him breathe, making sure he was real, making sure he was safe. I thought we had escaped the worst of it. I was wrong. 3 weeks after we left Eleanor's house, I was on my break at the coffee shop, scrolling through my phone while eating a stale sandwich. When I saw it, my hand froze. My coworker Mark asked if I was okay. I couldn't answer. On my screen was Chloe's video. The video. It had gone viral. "Helicopter mom freaks out over harmless prank," the caption read. The thumbnail was a screenshot of my face, twisted in horror, with a crying Jax blurred in the background. It had 3 million views. 3 million. I clicked on it with shaking hands. Chloe had edited it to make me look insane. She had cut out the mousetraps, the blood, Jax's real injury. Instead, it showed Jax putting on his shoes, making a surprised sound, and then me screaming and snatching him up. She had added dramatic sound effects, zoom-ins on my angry face. Her voiceover explained that she had simply put a few harmless toys in his shoes as a silly joke, but I had completely overreacted and traumatized my poor sensitive son. She painted herself as the victim, the fun aunt just trying to lighten the mood, attacked by an unstable sister who couldn't take a joke. The comments were worse than the video. Thousands of people were agreeing with her. Wow, no wonder that kid is so weak with a mom like that. She needs to calm down. It was clearly just fun. Poor Chloe, dealing with such a psycho family member. I scrolled and scrolled, watching strangers dissect my parenting, my character, my worth. My hands were shaking so badly I dropped my phone. Then I saw Eleanor's comment. She had posted it from her personal account, which had its own following thanks to Chloe's fame. My daughter has always been dramatic and emotionally unstable. I've tried to help her, but she refuses to get the therapy she clearly needs. Praying for my grandson, who deserves a better mother. It had 7,000 likes. I ran to the bathroom and threw up. Mark found me there 10 minutes later, sitting on the floor, still staring at my phone. He didn't ask questions. He just sat down next to me and waited until I could speak. "They're destroying me," I finally whispered. "They're making money off my son's pain." Mark took my phone gently and looked at the video. His jaw tightened. "Sarah," he said quietly, "this is abuse. What they did to Jax, and now this is abuse. You need to report this." I tried. God. I tried. The next day, I went to the police station. I brought photos of Jax's injuries, the medical reports, screenshots of the video. The officer listened politely, then explained that it was a family matter. Since there was no ongoing physical danger and the video didn't clearly show the mousetraps, there wasn't much they could do. The video was protected under free speech. Chloe had a right to tell her side of the story. I could pursue a civil suit if I wanted, but that would cost money I didn't have. He suggested family counseling. I left the station feeling more helpless than ever. Chloe's video continued to spread. 4 million views, 5 million. Brands were reaching out to her, praising her for standing up to toxic family members. She did a follow-up video about setting boundaries with negative people. She never mentioned the mousetraps. She never showed Jax's injuries. She was the hero of her own story, and the world believed her. Then it got worse. Jax's new school was small, and word spread fast. Kids recognized him from the video. They started calling him Mousetrap Boy. They would pretend to snap traps at him in the cafeteria. During recess, a group of older kids surrounded him, chanting that his mom was crazy. A teacher broke it up, but the damage was done. Jax came home that day and asked me the question that broke my heart. "Mommy, am I weak like Aunt Chloe said? Am I the reason you're always sad?" I held him so tight. I told him he was the strongest, bravest person I knew. I told him that what Chloe did was wrong, that hurting someone and then laughing about it was not a joke, but I could see in his eyes that he was starting to believe what the internet said about him, about us. That night, after Jax fell asleep, I sat in the dark of our tiny apartment and felt the full weight of my helplessness. Chloe was making thousands of dollars from that video. Eleanor was basking in the attention, playing the role of the concerned mother dealing with a troubled daughter. Meanwhile, my son was being bullied. I was being destroyed online, and the legal system had shrugged and told me there was nothing they could do. I could let them win. I could disappear, change our names, move far away and hope the internet forgot us, or I could fight back. But how do you fight people who control the narrative? How do you stand up to someone with millions of followers who will believe whatever they're told? Mark gave me the answer. The next shift we worked together, he pulled me aside during a quiet moment. "My cousin is a lawyer," he said. "She specializes in children's rights and cyberbullying cases. Her name is Rachel Davies. Let me give you her number. Just talk to her, please." I met Rachel Davies in her small office above a bookstore. She was in her 40s, with sharp eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor. I told her everything. I showed her the medical records, The original video I had managed to record on my phone right after we left Eleanor's house, screenshots of the comments, evidence of the harassment Jax was facing. She listened without interrupting, making notes on a yellow legal pad. When I finished, she sat back and was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, "What Chloe did to Jax is assault. What she's doing now is exploitation of a minor and defamation. What Eleanor is doing is aiding and abetting. We can build a case. It won't be fast and it won't be easy, but we can build a case." Hope flickered in my chest for the first time in weeks. "But the court process is slow," she continued. "And in the meantime, Chloe is profiting from your son's trauma. So while I work on the legal side, I think we need a different strategy. We need to shift the narrative." She explained that people like Chloe thrived on controlling the story. They presented a perfect image while hiding their cruelty. The key was to expose the gap between the image and the reality. Not through emotional appeals or angry rants, which would just make me look unstable, but through careful, strategic questioning that would make people start to doubt. "I can't afford a PR firm," I said quietly. Rachel smiled. "You don't need one. You just need patience and the truth. And maybe a little help." She taught me how to document everything. Every interaction, every comment, every piece of evidence of Chloe's pattern of behavior. She explained copyright law, showing me how I could potentially file claims against the video since it depicted my minor child without permission. She introduced me to her network, a community of people who had been fighting back against online harassment and exploitation. And then she said something that changed everything. "Chloe brands herself as a mental health advocate, right? Someone who cares about wellness and protecting vulnerable people?" I nodded. "Then let's ask her followers some questions. Not accusations, just questions. Let's make them think." I created an anonymous account. I didn't hide behind a fake name to harass Chloe. I just wanted to ask the questions her fans weren't asking. Under her videos about self-care and setting boundaries, I would comment things like, "I'm curious, how do you balance creating content about children while protecting their privacy and consent?" Or, "You talk a lot about kindness and mental health. What are your thoughts on the long-term psychological impact of public humiliation on children?" Other people started asking similar questions. Someone shared a screenshot of Eleanor's comment about me, asking, "Is it really supportive of mental health to publicly call your daughter emotionally unstable?" These weren't attacks. They were just questions, but they were effective. People started noticing the contradictions. Meanwhile, Rachel was building the legal case. She found other families whose children had been featured in Chloe's prank videos, kids who had been hurt or humiliated for content. She documented the money Chloe was making from ads on videos featuring minors without parental consent. She compiled everything into a file that she submitted to various platforms and to the district attorney's office. Weeks passed. I kept working my 2 jobs. Jax slowly started to smile again. The questions on Chloe's posts multiplied. Her comment sections became less about blind praise and more about genuine concern. Some of her sponsors started quietly backing away. Then Rachel called me. She had someone she wanted me to meet. His name was Detective James Miller. He was with the county's cybercrime unit and had been investigating a series of cases involving dangerous online challenges targeting children. When Rachel showed him Chloe's content, he saw a pattern. This wasn't just one incident with Jax. This was ongoing exploitation. Detective Miller was methodical. He analyzed Chloe's entire channel, documenting instances where children appeared to be in distress, where pranks crossed into abuse, where minors were used without proper consent. He tracked the money flow, showing how Chloe was profiting from content that violated platform policies and potentially state laws. One evening, about 3 months after that terrible morning, Rachel called me again. A producer from Channel 7 wants to do an investigative piece on child exploitation in social media content. They want to interview you. Jax's identity will be completely protected. I thought about it for one night. Then I said yes. The interview was intense. I sat in a studio chair under bright lights and told the story I had been living. I explained what Chloe had done to Jax. I showed the medical records. I talked about the viral video and how it had been edited to hide the abuse. I discussed the harassment Jax had faced, the comments Eleanor had made, the money being generated from my son's trauma. My face was shown. I used my real name. I was done hiding. The segment was titled, "When Pranks Become Abuse: The Dark Side of Family Vlogging." It featured my interview, Detective Miller's investigation, and commentary from child psychologists about the harm caused by public humiliation. They blurred Jax's face but showed enough of the house, enough of Chloe's voice, that anyone who followed her would recognize her. They showed the gap between her carefully curated mental health advocate persona and the reality of her actions. The episode aired on a Thursday night. By Friday morning, it had been shared hundreds of thousands of times. Chloe's comment sections exploded. Her sponsors issued statements. Within 48 hours, 3 major brands had terminated their partnerships with her. Her follower count started dropping. People were going through her old videos with new eyes, seeing patterns they had missed before. Eleanor tried to defend her on social media. She posted a long statement about how I was lying, how I had always been a troubled person seeking attention, how Jax had never been hurt. But people were done believing her. Screenshots of her cruel comments about me and her own grandson were everywhere. Someone dug up posts from years ago where she had praised Chloe for her brutal honesty and thick skin, posts that now read very differently in this new context. By the end of the week, Chloe had lost 70% of her sponsorships. Her videos were being demonetized. News outlets were running stories about accountability in influencer culture. The district attorney's office announced they were reviewing the case for potential charges related to child endangerment and exploitation. I watched it all from our tiny apartment above the laundromat. Jax asked me why my face was on TV. I told him that sometimes grown-ups have to stand up for what's right, even when it's scary. He hugged me and said I was brave. Coming from him, the child who had suffered the most and remained the kindest, it meant everything. Then, on a rainy Tuesday evening 2 weeks after the segment aired, there was a knock on my door. I looked through the peephole and my blood ran cold. Eleanor and Chloe stood in the hallway, both drenched from the rain. Eleanor's designer coat was soaked. Chloe's perfect makeup was running. They looked nothing like the polished people who had sneered at me months ago. I opened the door but didn't let them in. Jax was at Mrs. Chen's apartment. Safe. "What do you want?" My voice was steady. Eleanor spoke first, her tone desperate. "Sarah, please. We need help. We lost the house. Nobody will work with Chloe anymore. Your segment ruined everything. We have nowhere to go." Chloe was crying, actual tears mixing with rain and mascara. "I'm sorry, okay? I'm sorry about the mousetraps and the video and everything. I didn't think it would be such a big deal. Can't you just forgive me? We're family." I looked at these 2 women who had tortured my son and mocked my pain. I thought about the scared woman I had been just months ago, the one who had believed she needed their acceptance. I thought about Jax learning to laugh again. I thought about the dozens of messages I had received from other parents thanking me for speaking up. "No," I said simply. Eleanor's face twisted. "What do you mean, no? We need money. We need a place to stay. You owe us. You destroyed our lives." I actually laughed. "I owe you? After everything you did to my son? After you called me unstable to millions of people? After you profited from his pain? I owe you nothing." Chloe grabbed my arm. "Sarah, please. I'll do anything. I'll make an apology video. I'll tell everyone you were right. Just help us." I pulled my arm back. "You'll make an apology video because you're finally facing consequences. Not because you're actually sorry. You're not sorry you hurt Jax. You're sorry you got caught. But there was something I could offer them, not because they deserved it, but because I deserved to build something better than revenge. Here's what I'll do. I said. There's a community center 3 blocks from here. They need volunteers. They help families who've been through trauma, who've lost everything, who are rebuilding. You want my help? Go work there. Actually help people. Learn what it means to think about someone other than yourselves. Do that for 6 months, and then we'll talk. Eleanor's face went red. You want us to do charity work? Like we're common laborers? Chloe looked equally horrified. I'm an influencer, Sarah. I don't clean toilets and sort donations. Then we have nothing to discuss. I started to close the door. Eleanor shoved her foot in the way. You can't do this. We're your family. I looked her dead in the eye. You stopped being my family the moment you laughed at my son's pain. Now move your foot or I'm calling the police. They left. Eleanor was furious, already on her phone, probably trying to find someone else to manipulate. But Chloe looked back as they walked away. Something in her expression I couldn't quite read. Defeat, maybe. Or the first glimmer of awareness. 3 days later, I got a call from the community center. A young woman had shown up asking about volunteer opportunities. It was Chloe. She came back the next day, and the day after that, Eleanor never showed up. According to the center's director, Eleanor had left town, gone to stay with some distant relative who still had money. Chloe, surprisingly, stayed. I didn't go to the center at first. I didn't want to see her. I was busy with my own life. Rachel had helped me file a civil suit against Chloe and Eleanor for damages related to Jax's medical bills and the harassment. The case was moving forward. Detective Miller's investigation had resulted in charges. Chloe was facing misdemeanor child endangerment and exploitation charges. She was cooperating fully, probably hoping for leniency. But the woman working at the community center kept me updated. Chloe was showing up every day. She was quiet, didn't try to take photos or create content. She cleaned, she organized donations, she listened to the families who came through. One day, she was asked to help with a workshop on internet safety for kids. She broke down crying in the middle of it and had to excuse herself. Months passed. Summer turned to fall. Jax started at a new school, one where nobody knew about the video. He made friends. He joined the art club. He stopped having nightmares. We moved into a slightly bigger apartment, this one with actual walls separating the bedroom. I got promoted to assistant manager at the coffee shop and cut back on the cleaning jobs. We were building a real life. Then I received a letter in the mail. It was handwritten on plain paper. Dear Sarah, it began. I don't expect you to forgive me. I don't even know if I can forgive myself. Working at the center has shown me what I refused to see before. The families I meet there, they've lost everything because of abuse, because of people who hurt them for entertainment or control. I was one of those people. I hurt Jax. I hurt you. I used a child's pain to get views and money. I told myself it was just content, just a joke, just the way social media worked. But it wasn't. It was cruelty. I'm not writing this because I want anything from you. I'm writing because you deserve to know that you were right. About all of it. I'm going to plead guilty to the charges. My lawyer says I'll probably get probation and community service. I've already started therapy. I've deleted all my social media accounts. I'm trying to figure out who I am when I'm not performing for an audience. I don't know if I'll ever be a good person, but I'm trying, and I wanted you to know that none of this is your fault. It never was. What I did to Jax was evil. How Eleanor treated you was wrong. You were the only one strong enough to walk away and protect your son. Thank you for that. I hope Jax is happy. I hope you both are, Chloe. I read the letter 3 times. Then I folded it carefully and put it in a drawer. I didn't respond. Maybe someday I would. Maybe not. But I kept it as evidence of what I already knew. People could change, if they chose to. But whether they did or not wasn't my responsibility anymore. The civil case settled. Chloe agreed to pay all of Jax's medical bills plus damages. It wasn't a fortune, but it was enough to start a college fund for him and pay off my debts. Eleanor was found liable as well, though she had far less money than we thought. Most of her assets had been tied up in the house, which had been sold to pay her debts. Chloe was sentenced to 2 years probation, 300 hours of community service, and mandatory counseling. She completed the community service at the center. The director told me she had become one of their most dedicated volunteers, that she worked with families affected by online harassment, helping them navigate the legal and emotional aftermath. She never tried to contact me again after that letter. Eleanor disappeared entirely. Last I heard, she was living in a retirement community in Arizona, alone, still complaining to anyone who would listen about her ungrateful daughter. I didn't care. She had made her choices. As for me and Jax, we built something beautiful from the ashes of that nightmare. A year after the video aired, Rachel helped me start a nonprofit organization. We called it Safe Online, supporting and advocating for exploited children. We worked with families whose children had been harmed by social media content, helping them understand their legal rights, connecting them with therapists, providing resources. The organization started small, just me and a website and a few volunteers, but it grew. Parents reached out from all over the country, sharing their stories of children humiliated online, of family vloggers exploiting their kids, of pranks that crossed into abuse. We held workshops at schools about digital literacy and online safety. We lobbied for stronger laws protecting children's privacy and requiring consent for monetized content featuring minors. Jax was my inspiration for all of it, but I made sure to protect his privacy. He never appeared in any of our materials. He never had to tell his story unless he chose to. He was just a kid, finally getting to be a kid. By his 8th birthday, the video of his trauma had been taken down by the platform. By his 9th, he rarely mentioned that terrible morning. He was thriving, a sweet, creative boy who loved drawing and science and making elaborate Lego structures. He had friends who knew nothing about Mousetraps or viral videos. He had a childhood. One evening, about 2 years after everything began, Jax and I were cooking dinner together in our kitchen. It was still small, but it was ours. We were making his favorite spaghetti with homemade sauce. He was stirring the pot, concentrating hard, his tongue sticking out slightly the way it always did when he focused. The radio was playing. The windows were open to the spring air. "Mom?" he said suddenly. "Yeah, buddy?" I was chopping basil, the smell filling the kitchen. "Do you think Aunt Chloe is sorry?" I stopped chopping. Jax rarely asked about Chloe anymore. "What made you think about that?" "I don't know. I had a dream last night that she was crying." He kept stirring, his small hands careful with the spoon. "I think maybe she didn't know how much it hurt. I think maybe she thought it was funny and then she learned it wasn't." I put down the knife and crouched next to him, putting my hand over his on the spoon. "We stirred together, Jax," I said carefully. "What Chloe did was very wrong. Adults are supposed to protect children, not hurt them. Sometimes people do bad things and they're sorry later. Sometimes they're not sorry at all. Either way, the most important thing is that you're safe now." He nodded, still focused on the sauce. "I know I'm safe. You made me safe." Then he looked up at me with those wise eyes, too wise for someone so young. "But I think maybe she's trying to be better now. And that's good, right? That people can try to be better?" I hugged him tight. This child who had been through so much and still had room in his heart for the possibility of redemption. "Yeah, buddy, that's very good." After dinner, after Jax went to bed, I pulled Chloe's letter out of the drawer where I had kept it. I read it one more time, and then I wrote my own letter. I didn't mail it. I just needed to write it. "Chloe," it said, "I don't forgive you. Maybe someday I will, but that day isn't today. What you did to my son is something I relive every time I see a scar on his foot, every time he flinches at a loud noise, every time I remember that the worst thing that ever happened to him was supposed to be entertainment. But I appreciate your letter. I appreciate that you're trying to change. I hope you succeed, for the sake of every child you might have influenced, every parent who thought your behavior was acceptable because it got views. I'm not doing this for you. I'm doing this for Jax. and for every kid like him. I'm doing this so that no other parent has to feel the helplessness I felt, watching their child's pain go viral while the world laughed. You asked once if I would ever come crawling back. I won't, but I am moving forward. And if part of moving forward means acknowledging that you're trying to do better, then I can do that. Not for you, for me. I folded the letter and put it back in the drawer with hers. Then I went to check on Jax. He was asleep, his stuffed elephant tucked under his arm, a smile on his peaceful face. I stood in his doorway for a long time, just watching him breathe, feeling the weight of everything we had survived. That little boy, who had been hurt so badly, who had been mocked and exploited, was safe, he was happy, and I had done that. Not by staying quiet, not by keeping the peace, not by accepting cruelty in the name of family, but by standing up, by fighting back, by refusing to let the people who hurt us define our worth. Jax stirred in his sleep, reached for his elephant, and settled again. In the morning, we would have breakfast. He would go to school. I would go to work, and then to the office for Safe Online, where I would answer emails from parents desperate for help. Our life wouldn't be perfect. There would still be bills to pay and challenges to face. But we would face them together, in a home built on respect and love, not fear and manipulation. Standing in that doorway, watching my son sleep safely, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Peace. Not the brittle, anxious peace of appeasement, but the deep, solid peace that comes from knowing you have protected what matters most. Eleanor's voice echoed in my memory. You'll come crawling back. You always do. But she had been wrong. I never went back. I never would. I had found something far better than the conditional love of people who saw me as a tool, as a servant, as less than. I had found my own strength. I had found justice, not through revenge, but through refusing to be silent. The community center thrived. The families we helped started their own support groups. Children who had been exploited found healing. And somewhere out there, maybe Chloe was actually learning what it meant to be a decent human being. I hoped so, not for her sake, but for the sake of anyone who might cross her path in the future. My phone buzzed with a text from Rachel. Got another inquiry about Safe Online. Major network wants to do a story on the work you're doing. You interested? I smiled and typed back. Let me think about it. For once, I'm not in a hurry. We're doing good work. It can speak for itself. And it was true. The work did speak for itself. Every child we helped, every parent we empowered, every law we influenced, it all added up to something bigger than my anger, bigger than my pain. It added up to change. Jax laughed in his sleep, a sound so pure it made my heart ache with love. That sound, that laugh, that was what I had been fighting for all along. Not revenge, not vindication. Just the simple, profound right of a child to laugh without fear, to grow without being someone else's content, to be protected by the people who were supposed to love him. I had given him that. Despite everything Eleanor and Chloe had done, despite the viral video and the mockery and the legal battles, I had given my son a childhood, and in doing so, I had given myself something too. A life built on my own terms, a purpose beyond survival. A future that didn't require me to make myself smaller to fit into someone else's vision. The world hadn't ended when I walked out of that mansion. In fact, it had finally begun. I turned off Jax's light and went to my own room. Tomorrow there would be more work to do, more families to help, more battles to fight. But tonight, in our small apartment above the laundromat, with the faint smell of detergent and the sound of the city outside our windows, we were safe. We were home. We were free. And that, in the end, was the sweetest revenge of all. Not destroying the people who hurt us, but building a life so full of purpose and love that their cruelty became irrelevant. They had tried to break us. Instead, we had broken free. Jax's words from dinner echoed in my mind. That people can try to be better. Yes, they could. And so could I. Not better at enduring, not better at sacrificing, but better at knowing my worth, at protecting my child, at creating something meaningful from the wreckage. I thought about the mother I had been that terrible morning, frantically pulling mousetraps off her son's feet while someone filmed her horror for entertainment. She felt like a different person now. Not weaker or stronger, just different. She had done the best she could with what she knew, and when she learned better, when that moment of clarity finally came, she had acted. That was all any of us could do. Learn, act, protect what mattered, build something better from the broken pieces. I lay down in my bed, in my apartment, in my life that nobody could take from me, and I slept. For the first time in years, I slept without nightmares, without fear, without the weight of trying to be good enough for people who would never value me. I slept the sleep of someone who had fought and won, not against her enemies, but for her child and for herself. And when I woke up the next morning to Jax's laughter as he played with his Legos in the kitchen, making up elaborate stories about heroes and villains and people learning to be kind, I knew that everything I had been through, every moment of pain and fear and struggle, had been worth it. Because he was laughing, he was safe, and we were free. Family isn't about blood or obligation. It's not about maintaining peace at any cost or accepting abuse in the name of loyalty. Family is what you build with the people who actually love you, who protect you, who celebrate your joy instead of feeding on your pain. Family is the life you create when you finally love yourself enough to walk away from people who don't. I found my family. It's me and Jax, Mrs. Chen checking in on us, Mark bringing us leftover pastries from the coffee shop, Rachel fighting our legal battles, the volunteers at the community center, the parents in our support groups. It's everyone who showed up when I needed help, everyone who believed us, everyone who understood that protecting children is more important than preserving toxic traditions. That morning, sitting at our small kitchen table while Jax ate his cereal and told me about his dream where he was a superhero who saved kids from mean adults, I realized I had everything I needed. Not everything I wanted, maybe. We still struggled with money sometimes. The apartment was still too small. My back still hurt from long shifts. But we were building something real, something good, something that couldn't be taken away by cruel people with cameras and cruel mothers with conditional love. Standing up to Eleanor and Chloe didn't just save Jax, it saved me too. It taught me that I was capable of more than endurance. I was capable of action, of justice, of creating change. Every family we helped through Safe Online, every law we helped pass, every child who got to keep their privacy and their childhood, it all stemmed from that one decision to stop accepting the unacceptable. So here's what I want to leave you with. If you're in a situation like I was, if someone in your family is hurting you or your children, if you're being exploited or manipulated or made to feel worthless, know this: you're not crazy. You're not overreacting. You're not too sensitive. The people who tell you to just keep the peace, to not rock the boat, to accept cruelty as normal, they're wrong. You deserve better. Your children deserve better, and it's okay to fight for that, even if it means losing people you once thought you needed. Walking away is terrifying. Fighting back is exhausting. Building a new life from nothing is the hardest thing I've ever done. But you know what was harder? Staying. Watching my son suffer. Accepting that his pain was entertainment. Believing I deserved to be treated that way. You are stronger than you think. You are worth more than you believe. And your children, if you have them, are watching. They're learning from you what love looks like, what family means, what they should accept from the people who claim to care about them. Show them something better. Show them that love doesn't hurt, that family protects, that nobody has the right to exploit their pain for profit or entertainment or power. I can't promise it will be easy. It won't be. But I can promise it will be worth it. Because on the other side of that fear, on the other side of that pain, there's freedom, there's peace. There's the possibility of building something beautiful from the broken pieces of what you left behind. That little boy who screamed in pain while his aunt filmed is sleeping safely tonight. He's dreaming about superheroes and art projects and all the normal things a kid should dream about. He's not worried about mousetraps or viral videos or being good enough for people who see him as content. He's just a kid, and I made that possible by refusing to accept that his suffering was entertainment. You can do that too. Whatever your situation, whatever your fear, you can choose yourself. You can choose your children. You can walk away from the people who hurt you and build a life that doesn't require you to sacrifice your dignity for approval. So I'm asking you now, have you ever had to cut toxic people out of your life to protect yourself or your children? How did you find the courage? What helped you through it? Drop your story in the comments. Let's support each other. Let's build a community of people who understand that protecting children and respecting yourself isn't selfish, it's necessary. If this story resonated with you, if you've been where I was or you know someone who needs to hear this, please share it. Hit that subscribe button and the notification bell so you never miss our stories of survival and triumph. Every share, every comment, every subscription helps us reach more people who need to know they're not alone. Together, we can change the narrative. Together, we can protect our kids. Together, we can build families based on love, not control. Thank you for listening to my story. Thank you for being here. And remember, you are stronger than you think. You are worth more than you've been told. And you deserve a life where laughter is safe, where children are protected, and where family actually means something good.